Today I'm going to teach you how chronic pain lives in the entire body. Chronic pain is not in the tissue. Chronic pain is not in the disc herniation, your pelvic tilt, a torn muscle, a weak core, or even an irritated nerve. So we cannot blame the sacroiliac joint or your piriformis or the disc degeneration or herniation, because chronic pain is definitely not in a single specific tissue. 90 to 95% of the time, pain is not due to a specific structural cause. So most diagnoses, your pain is because of a disc herniation, a short leg, piriformis syndrome, weak glutes, SI joint, pelvic tilt. None of these things, these diagnoses, most of the time are wrong. How do I know? Boom, here's the research. 90 to 95% of the low back pain does not have an identifiable structural cause. Even if you have a disc herniation, because if we get the MRI, yes, we can tell you whether or not you have a disc herniation, which is technically the diagnosis, but the diagnosis doesn't actually tell you why you have pain. The diagnosis just tells you that you have a disc herniation. We can tell you that, but we cannot tell you whether or not your disc herniation is actually causing your pain unless you have true neuropathic symptoms, as I described in the last video in this series on the 3 types of pain, right? Pain cannot exist in a tissue. A disc herniation does not have consciousness. So pain literally cannot exist in a tissue. It can only become conscious once it reaches the brain. But if we want to take it a step further, this is where things get weird. Even consciousness doesn't happen in the brain. Because if we have a brain, but the brain has no inputs, it has no sight, sound, hearing, smell, touch, no sensory input, and it also has 0 memories, there's nothing to draw on, there's no context, there's absolutely nothing, there's debatably no consciousness, and therefore no pain. Now, some of you are going down a philosophical rabbit hole in your head, and I know if you talk about Buddhist and yoga philosophy, sometimes things get really interesting here, and that is a conversation for a completely different day off camera that could be very fun to have. But for our neuroscientific perspective, nothing is happening. If there's no thing to be aware of, then there is no consciousness. So if even consciousness doesn't technically happen in the brain, consciousness happens in the whole human, then obviously chronic pain cannot be in your head. But it's also not in the tissue, right? Because you cannot isolate one tissue from the rest of the tissues in the body. Everything is too interconnected. Likewise, we can't argue about, is the chronic pain in your brain or is it in the body? The brain is the body. The whole body and brain rely on each other. You cannot separate them. And if we take it a step further, you cannot isolate the human being from the environment. Do you think that living in a sick, toxic, polluted, trash on the streets, going to the liquor store, like crappy environment, do you think that maybe that has an impact on your health and maybe that has an influence on your pain? So this is part of my pain neuroscience series where we've already covered normal pain processing and the 3 and only 3 types of pain. Now we're talking about chronic pain living in the body. Welcome. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Anthony Davis. I empower people with chronic back pain and sciatica to reclaim the active life they love. If you ever need one-on-one support, you can always watch the masterclass in the description and book a call to see if we can help. So how exactly does chronic pain live in the human body? Well, you've got the muscular system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the circulatory system, digestive system, immune system, skeletal system, and every single system will have tangible physical and physiological changes that occur as a result of chronic pain. For example, let's take the muscular system. Well, I think we could all agree that wearing a corset is cruel, right? These poor women in the past that were forced to wear corsets, right? Think about their poor backs, right? They must have had crazy back pain. I would assume so. And yet we voluntarily force ourselves to basically wear a corset through physical therapy that's constantly telling us to brace your core all the time, suck the belly in. But if you're constantly sucking the belly in and keeping the core tight and bracing and protecting, your muscles, all of them, not just one specific muscle, they're just gonna be worn out and tired. They're gonna get inflamed. They're going to see atrophy because they're just tired and not recovering. So they're gonna get weaker over time, not stronger. and that's going to lead to more pain. Now, I could go through every single system, but that would mean a video for every system, and eventually I might do that. But for now, let me show you how they all interact and work together. Let's say you have a disc herniation, because I know a lot of you are dealing with that, so we have a skeletal issue. Well, as a result of that, your muscles become hypersensitive and overprotective. They're bracing all the time. As a result of bracing, your nerves become excessively sensitive. We'll talk about that in the next video. And the brain believes that you are on high alert, that there must be something wrong. Otherwise, why would you be bracing all the time? We stop exercising. We stop getting good blood flow and circulation to the tissues, and pain occurs as a result of hypoxia and sedentary behavior. So the circulatory system is involved. Dealing with chronic pain is stressful. So your adrenal glands and the other parts of your fight or flight system are going to go into high alert status. You're stressed, you're in pain, your digestive system is going to be impacted, one, because stress negatively impacts digestion, but also because as a result of dealing with this, you might not be eating the healthiest food because, again, life sucks when you're in pain. You might be going for the junk food or too much alcohol. The immune system is actually a huge part of chronic pain. I have to reserve that for a future video, but the immune system is negatively impacted by the entire process, and the immune system is responsible for some of the hypersensitization of the nervous system, so much so that we refer to it as the neuroimmune system. And as a result of all of this and how much pain just sucks, your mental health, your mindset, your thoughts, your beliefs are going to be negatively impacted. You might avoid doing certain exercises, which means you're not moving enough, which means less movement. And if you do less movement, well, now we can go back to that disc herniation in the skeletal system and say, well, it's not going to heal as rapidly because we're not moving it. And motion is lotion. So we need to break this cycle. But can you see, again, let me know in the comments, can you see how every system in the body is part of chronic pain? I cite this study all the time. This is a chart showing all of the different factors that are interrelated that cause chronic pain. And what we see is that we have individual factors, we have psychological factors, biomechanical factors, nociceptive, that's neuroplastic changes, tissue injury, behavioral and lifestyle, contextual factors, social and work factors. And all of these factors not only interact with pain, but they interact with each other to lead to either more or less pain. So chronic pain is not just in the whole human body, but it's also in the person and their environment and the people, places, things that they surround themselves with. Pain does not occur in a tissue. Tissues do not have consciousness. Pain occurs in a human, a whole human. So stop focusing on the disc herniation, the pelvic tilt, the weak core, the weak glutes, the irritated SI joint, the leg length discrepancies. This stuff does not matter. Let me know in the comments if this is making sense. This is really important for you to understand. As soon as you see it, as soon as it really clicks for you, everything else makes sense. Why am I not getting better with typical physical therapy, chiropractic, massage, acupuncture, injections, medications, even surgery, right? Why do these things not fix chronic pain in many cases? Not all. Sometimes people get success, and great. But if you're watching this video, that hasn't worked for you. Why does that not work? This series of videos needs to click. It needs to make sense. And if it's not making sense, then I need to help you with that. So please let me know in the comments. Are you having some aha moments, some really light bulb moments? Is there something that you're still struggling with that you'd like me to explain in a different way or go into deeper depth on? Now, even though chronic pain is in the entire body and every single system, the nervous system, the brain, your spinal cord, your peripheral nerves, has a very, very special role in chronic pain. So much so that we can really decisively say that, at least in part, chronic pain is always, at least in part, a nervous system dysfunction. Chronic pain has a physiological cause, but not an anatomical one. It's due to chemistry, not due to big, disc herniations, leg length discrepancies, weak core, SI joint stuff, nerve compression. In most cases, we're not dealing with anatomical issues, we're dealing with physiological ones. But the main takeaway is that 90 to 95% of the time, pain is not due to damage. I already cited the research on this. And I know that sounds ridiculous because you're saying it started with an injury, and maybe it did. Maybe it started with lifting something that was too heavy, moving a bed, or some other activity that you're like, no, I injured myself. Don't you tell me it's not damage. I injured myself. Or you see the disc herniation on the MRI and you're telling me I'm full of shit because you have the MRI to prove it. Well, the last video I talked about the timelines and the 3 types of pain. And yes, your pain could start because of tissue damage, but after 3 months, if you've dealt with pain and it has become chronic, well, chronic pain is a different beast. It is no longer due to tissue damage or nerve damage. Again, unless you have true blue neuropathic pain, which I described in a previous video. But for most of you, chronic pain is going to be your neurons, your actual nerve cells have become hyper-excitable. The chemistry has changed. There are physical changes in the synapse, the nerve endings, the ion channels. At a microscopic level, we see real changes that can actually be improved on. And beyond that, instead of saying, oh, it's just this one muscle, no. The entire muscular system, the entire endocrine system or nervous system, immune system, the entire system is going to change, and every single system is going to change. And then beyond that, it's impacting your behavior. You're canceling plans. You're not even making plans because you don't want to go out, because you don't want to flare yourself up. This is going to impact your mood, your mental health, and it just absolutely domino effect derails your life. And we see a lot more changes. Your nutrition, alcohol consumption might change. Sleep is going to be negatively impacted. Mental health, mindset, exercise, circulation, blood flow, everything is going to be impacted. But in this series, we're talking about neuroscience because that is one of the most important things that you need to understand. And so next time we'll be talking about central sensitization, which is where the nerve cells in your spinal cord and brain have physical changes that occur that lead to hypersensitivity and increased chronic pain. So to give you a little warm up for that, previously we talked about normal pain processing, which is like 1 + 1 = 2. That's how we expect pain to go. It's just normal, it's expected. You step on a nail, 1 + 1 = 2. You step on a nail, you have pain. We step on a nail, we have a signal transmitted through the nerve receptors and synapses, which are like gates, and they travel along the neurons or axons, which are like roads. And we have to open a certain number of gates and travel along these roads to get to the brain. When we get to the brain, we have an output, a neurosignature associated with pain, that the brain processes all of the given information at that time to determine if there is a threat. If there is a threat, if your brain thinks there is a threat, you will have pain. If the brain thinks there is not a threat, you will not have pain. And the analogy I want to use is if the brain was a fortress or the government in the center of a city, and the city was surrounded by walls, and each of those walls had gates. So here we have a city with walls around it, gates down the center, and we have a message to deliver. If we want to deliver that message, meaning we have some kind of input from the body, the damage, for example, or it could be a false message, but either way, we have a message, we want to get it to the brain in the center of the city. How do we do that, and what can go wrong along the way? And what we see is that with central sensitization, which is coming up in the next video, that 1 + 1 can equal 20. That one little signal from the back can be amplified like crazy and lead to severe pain even when there is no additional damage to the body. So join me in the next video where I talk about central sensitization, and I will see you there.